Shane, how are you doing? You were at a couple of matches at the weekend, and you've got a good little tan for it. I've got the light shining on my head here. It makes me look very pale compared to you, I have to say. But look, I'm sweltering talking about this here now because I had to close the window to do this. So I can only imagine what the players went through in all the matches we saw this weekend. How they got through it is unbelievable.
Unbelievable, Mike. Unbelievable. And I think what you seen at the weekend was no matter how fit you are, no matter how much training you've done, nobody trained, in May or in June getting ready for championship in 29, 30 degrees heat. We might have seen it in maybe one round of the league, I suppose the Tipp Waterford round comes to mind with the heat that was there that day, but just phenomenal stuff, Mike. The players, everything was left out there. And I think for me, it was a real common pattern across the weekend was, 44, 45 minutes influx of subs. I was there in Thurles, Clare and Wexford. I think after 45 minutes between the two teams, I think 9 subs came on between the 45th and maybe the 55th minute. And it'll just tell you the ferocious effort that was there, the heat that was there, and the intensity. Especially in Thurles and down in Nolan Park as well, knockout hurling. Lads knew that it was do or die, and everything was left out in the pitch. But we seen a few hurley carriers throwing in a few bottles of water and physios coming in with water as well. And I think everyone was fair enough. And look, down in Cork yesterday, common sense by the ref and the officials, fair play to them as well in all the games, that the water breaks were a little bit extended, So I think that was kudos to everyone, all officials involved with that.
Yeah, definitely. Not much complaining about the Susishkas this weekend, thankfully. But geez, let's talk a little bit about that then. Like one of the most remarkable Munster finals I think any of us can ever remember. Like in the first, I think I tweeted at halftime saying like Tipp have just been phenomenal here. Like but I was a little bit worried about Limerick. There's a little bit of a banned word in GAA punditry, Shane, that starts with an I and ends with tensity. But it did feel like Limerick were just off the pace and Tipp had their number. And then the second half, like a performance for the 8, it almost a defining performance for this great team, like you would think.
Yeah, just phenomenal stuff. I suppose we all know the figures at this stage, Mike, but I just maybe to tell some people what they were like. At halftime it's 2-16 to 12 points. Fast forward to the second water break, and the score is 2-17 to 2-22. Yeah. So Limerick outscored Tipp 110 to 1 point in the third quarter. Now, if I could just put it into context for people, how dominant were they in that third quarter? Well, Limerick got off 13 shots and they scored 11 times. But Tipp only had 4 shots in the quarter, and that'll tell you the dominance that Limerick had in the whole thing. And they got 1 point. We got 1 point in the third quarter, and I suppose look that set up what was to come. I was down at the game myself, lucky to be there. And 10 points. You're 10 points up at half time in a Munster senior final, and the air around the ground with all the Tipperary fans was, there's something big is coming here out of Limerick. And I was just I thought it was absolutely brilliant, John Kiley's interview straight after the game, and I just have a quote here from him. He said, "We've great faith in our ability as a team. We had to do a little bit of restructuring, but it really was about us getting stuck in. We were not physically engaged in the game." So for me, no matter what team you're with, no matter what you're doing, there's John Kiley, who's one of the best managers over the best hurling team in the country at the moment, saying we simply didn't work hard enough in the first half, and that's why Tipp dominated everything and took it back foot. The little bit of restructuring I thought was very interesting for me, that Cian Lynch moved more out of the centre and they started hitting him more on the wings with the ball, and he was winning puckouts when he's no right to. And Dan McCormick was probably our man of the match in the first half. By our, I mean Tipperary's. He had spent so much energy trying to curtail Cian, and Cian was he was a colossus for him there and throughout the whole game really, when things even weren't going well for him.
Have you ever experienced anything like this on a pitch, or even seen it yourself, like of such a turnaround? Because it wasn't even that it was just teams settle into games when they're not playing well. You see that a bit and they might get into it. But it was more like 15 men or whatever, including the subs, all just complete change. You see even in, like what you said, Tipp not getting in shots and stuff in the second half. There was how many moments of like real old school style full back play where Morrissey or Nash or something like that caught a ball and broke out and won the free and celebrated. Like that was happening as much as the scores down the other end. It just seemed like from 1 to 15 or whatever it was, obviously there was 2 subs brought on before half time as well, that Limerick just were a completely different team, different animal completely in the second half. I don't know if you've ever experienced that kind of change before. Sometimes it can be hard if you know you have the talent but you're not there in the day. A halftime break isn't going to completely transform you, you know, usually.
No, and you know what it is for me, Mike, right? And you could be down 10 points at halftime. You could have an unbelievably talented team. And, you know, you take the soccer teams like the Paris Saint-Germains and these kind of teams down through the years who have unbelievable talent. But they could be down 3 or 4-0 at halftime and they could lose the game 6-0. And for me, the difference in those kind of teams and the Limerick team that they have now, right? And I was talking to Limerick people afterwards. I said, first of all, this is the greatest group you've ever had or maybe ever will have. And they all agreed. They said, look, we are enjoying every moment of this. Says we spent long enough looking at G winning things or looking at Clare winning things or looking at all the other teams in Munster winning things. And they said, we're going to appreciate this. But it's summed up. John Kiely sums everything up for me. And you're 10 points down at half time, you do a little bit of restructuring. But if you don't have a culture embedded in the group, and that's what they have, these Limerick lads are very close on and off the field, John, Mike.
Yeah.
And John Kiely said after the match, he said, we did this for the group, but for the guys this morning that trained the Kilmallock, and he said they trained their backsides off. And I've no doubt that was probably brought up in the dressing room at halftime. I've worked with Caroline Curran before. She was with us when we had success with Tipp. And like, you know, the 10 or 12 guys that train in Kilmallock are helping to make this team better. And then even when the Limerick lads are lined up to come out into the pitch, there's subs either side of the wall there to give them a clap on the back. And for me, that's what it is, Mike. You can have all the talent you want in the world, but if you don't have that culture and you don't have that belief in each other, that when the chips are down, and like as anybody that was there yesterday, 10 points down at halftime, majority of other teams would have said, it's so hot today, it's just not going to be our day. But no, because of the whole culture they have, the group they have, and obviously the talent they have. But I mean, the belief they have in each other and the trust they have in each other when the thing is at its highest, that was evident yesterday. And I mean, to outscore Tipp 2-17 to 1-5 in the second half. And let's be honest, Mike, Tipp's goal was near at the end of the game. I think Limerick were 8 points up at the time. It was a consolation. Great finish now by Mark Kehoe, but just phenomenal second half performance from Limerick. One for the ages for sure for Munster final. And look, they got to bring home the Mick Mackey Cup. First time the Munster Cup has had a name, and Mick Mackey, and it's going back to Limerick, back to a hand, back to the Morrisseys there and all of them. So phenomenal performance by every one of them, really.
Yeah, 3 in a row. It's an incredible thing. Munster finals definitely still matter. Tipperary's point of view, then, could they have done more? Like, I mean, it really shouldn't be overlooked how well they played in the first half and how they did seem to have Limerick's number. And I know Limerick mightn't have been at their best, but even so, Tipp had to do it. Could they have done more? A team with that much experience, Shane, could they have done more to just stem the tide a little bit? 110 to a point in a quarter of hurling. Limerick were on fire. They were borderline unstoppable. I mean, dark art stuff, like go down injured or whatever the case may be. I know Carl Barrett did go down injured at one stage, and that's definitely worthy of a talking point, because maybe the game would have been very different if Aaron Gillan gets sent off. But could Tipp have done more to maybe earlier changes, changing the style themselves, or rabbit in the headlights, basically, at least until the water break?
Yeah. No, I think so, Mike. We're first quarter dominated first quarter, dominated first half of hurling. And Sheedy said it afterwards. You know, he wouldn't say things like their best probably 15-20 minute spell of hurling he's probably been involved with it. And I would agree. Everyone in the stands, like, we were all going down in hope, like, as Tipperary fans. But after the first 15-20 minutes, your hope was growing into more, we're going to do this. And like, Limerick had 2 frees. Tom Morris' first free off the post. David Burns hits a free off the post. Garrod Hegarty drops a ball short for maybe 40-45 yards. And you're looking at all these things going, and you're like, this is going to be our day. Like, this is going to be our day. 1-8, 7 points up after the first quarter. Tipp had 8 wides in the first quarter as well, Mike. 8 wides. Yeah. Okay. And 4 or 5 of them scoreable chances. Like, they just dominated every sector. But I was talking to a very high-ranking official after the game, and he just said, for Kyle Hayes' goal, you know, and as you said, and maybe other things as well, you don't like to see going on, it probably is a time to just take a yellow card. But unfortunately for Tipp, the guy who's chasing back Kyle Hayes is Dan McCormack. McCormack is already on a yellow card, and I think a tick. If he pulls down Kyle Hayes, he's go down to 14 men. And he knows that. If you watch his body language, Mike, he's chasing him back. He's never looking really to get the arm in around, pull him back by the jersey. He's trying to get the flick in, because in his mind, he knows he's on a yellow. Now, what a goal by Kyle Hayes. See the memes going around comparing him to the guys bouncing the ball off the ground like the lads would before, like Djokovic would before he'd serve in Wimbledon, off the ground twice. Hurley turned the wrong way as well. If people watch it, I'm sure they've seen it. Like, that's some confidence in yourself. But if it's anyone else for me except Dan McCormack, I think I think they're taking a yellow card. I really do. And I know some of the listeners might like to hear that, but let's be honest here. You have to try and stem the tide some bit. And like, as soon as that goal went in, like, I mean, the confidence they grew and grew. And, the smaller the gap was getting, you could see the confidence in Limerick. The crowd were getting louder. There was a big Limerick crowd, the terrace to the left of us there. They were getting louder and louder, and they stand across the way. And look, they just were phenomenal. But like, you can't say any one sector of the field for Tipp, that really, really fell down. Like, for me, it was just we just got wiped across the board, and Limerick they changed the game, and it just wasn't happening for Graham Mulcahy. But Jesus, what a sub to bring on an Aaron Gillan, 6 points, two from play, 4 for frees. Obviously, a little bit of controversy we might talk about as well, Mike. But I mean, Dan Morrissey, what a guy to come in, and just the Limerick smarts as well. I just love learning from the best all the time. Rich English goes down, and it's a temporary substitution. So Limerick are allowed to bring on 5 more subs as well after this. And with the heat that was there yesterday, they were allowed to bring on 6 guys. And it's just good smarts. It's boxing clever all the time. Their subs have a big impact. Pat Ryan comes on, gets on a lot of ball. David Reedy gets a point. Conor Boylan comes on and he's busy. Serious bench. Serious squad. Mike, I think it's in their hands. I really, really do now at this stage.
And isn't that it? Because I mean, I've got questions over, like, I mean, you have to have Kylie's thing. Maybe is like, you'd have to have competitiveness in the squad. So maybe we don't play Morrissey and we don't play Gillan because the lads have done nothing wrong or whatever. But like, you're watching and it's a Munster final. Play your best players. Like Dan Morrissey, like you were opened up, or Limerick were opened up twice in the first half, and you're thinking like, there's the man who was, the best fullback in the country last year, so on and so forth. But it's really hard to even have these discussions because as soon as they turned it on, there was no team. We're talking about what Tipp could have done to maybe stay in the game, but it feels like there was nobody that could have lived with them when they were like this. It's actually hard to analyse flaws in Limerick because even though they're there, they can just overcome them. Like,
yeah, they can. Like, like if I take Keane Lynch for example, normally Keane would be chipping in with 3 or 4 points. Like, he scored 1 point from play yesterday, and as I said, Dan McCormick was our man of the match, Tipp's man of the match in the first half. But he was spent. Like, he was spent trying to curtail this guy. 1 point from play, he got it in the first half. But the amount of ball he got on, and it's just the trust they have in each other that they know, right, if it's not happening for me today, I'll win the ball and I'll throw it out to you. And like Gerard Hegarty came roaring into it there in the second half, 3 points from play. Tom Morrissey's best performance of the year so far, league and championship, 5 points from play and a free. As I said, Gillan, Shamey Flanagan slowly but surely becoming their go-to guy, 1-3 from play, caused an awful lot of bother, and the goal disallowed, square ball, right call for me, he was in the square as well. And Peter Casey, often an unsung hero of Limerick hurling, because for years, 3 years even, he was always with Graham Mulcahy or Shamey Flanagan just to get on the field. 5 points from play yesterday. His last point showed his fitness and his composure. Over by the sideline, tips the ball onto himself, cuts in along, gets a bit of space, taps it over the bar. 5 points from play from him. So, like as you said, you could try and tie down a few of them. I mean, Sean Finn wasn't even at his really best yesterday. But Barry Nash steps up and is unbelievable. Like, so, like, what do you do with them? Like, Diarmaid Byrne scores 4 points, like, and monster point from play. He runs up the field, the ball hits the post, and he gets the rebound. Like, I mean, Kyle Hayes' wonder goal. But then again, Kyle Hayes probably wasn't at his brilliant best yesterday, but had one of the best moments of the championship and got goal of maybe this decade, probably one of the greatest goals ever in hurling. If there's any flaws, I suppose the couple of goals we got was when Decky Hannon was on the back foot, Mike. And I suppose other teams might look at that to say, Decky Hannon outstanding on the ball, but maybe we could try and catch him on the back foot. And I suppose Tipp did get some change out of going long. But if you look at Tipp's puckouts, you're not going to go long on Hayes or Diarmaid Byrne. It was right down the middle, and we did get some change out of that. So I'm sure other teams might look at that. Maybe
there was definitely an option. There was an option there as well of like kind of having the 1 man in coming out, but runners in as well, and that would be like, it'd be a frustration for me for both Clare and Wexford. Say if we were talking about that match in a few minutes, is that Clare maybe played a target man where he was on his own and isolated and nobody coming for the breaking ball, and Wexford played nobody inside at all. So but like, I mean, that was brilliant from Tipp, and it was definitely something that could be exploited longer, but it again, once Limerick kind of shored it up, they shored it up. Did it feel like a Munster final there? You mentioned the crowd. Like, it obviously was a much smaller one. It was great to see them on the terraces. The pitch looked unbelievable in Cork. It looked like an artificial pitch almost. But did it feel that was with the comeback and the atmosphere and the fact that it was such a good game, or is it still just lacking so much from there being so few there?
I tell you, there was a great atmosphere there. But did it feel like a Munster final? I suppose I went down with my brother and my wife to the match, and I was just saying it outside. No, it didn't really feel like a Munster final. And I suppose you are maybe missing that extra bit of a crowd. The terrace thing is massive down in Cork as well for Munster final day. Anyone was lucky enough to play in it, you love the terrace, the buzz off the terraces. The parade beforehand, we're still missing that. They actually went to play the national anthem yesterday, and I was tweeting last week. I said I'd love to get the pipe bands back in the stadiums to play the national anthem, because I love the rattle of that drum and the pipes going, and it gets the hairs on the back of your neck before the game even starts, and I suppose all those little small things didn't really feel like a Munster final. But I suppose at the end of it, like, the Mick Mackey Cup gets raised above in the stand, so it's every bit as much a Munster final as any other of us. But for the feel and the atmosphere around beforehand, no, it didn't really have the same feeling as you would for 45,000 down in Cork with the weather and the terrace is full and lads wearing black t-shirts collapsing in the terrace because they didn't factor this in at all. You know what I mean? These things, I've seen these things happen down in Cork on hot days. But but hopefully, look, you know what, Mike, we're getting there. I think we're getting there. Great to have even that many there and that many above in Croker as well.
I was in I'd imagine, if I was to hazard a guess, I'd say you might have been in the opposite terrace that day if you weren't playing like an underage game or something on the same day. But in '97, I was in the stand in the terrace where David Ford scored the goal into thing, and the man beside me who brought 4 or 5 of us went to the match, he was an older guy, grabbed me around the neck. And as everybody was jumping up and down, and it took a good 10 seconds before everybody realised I was being choked out here as everybody was celebrating one of the biggest goals in Clare hurling history. So the terrace in Cork at the final day is it's a place to be, let's say, even if I did survive it.
Well, there were shoulders going on between Tipp and Clare lads in the stands that day. I was at the match with my dad, and we were in the stands, and there was Tipp and Clare lads hopping off each other beside us before the ball even went in. It'll tell you the ferociousness of the rivalry at the time. But I'll always remember the beeps of the horns of the Clare crowds going home via the tunnel that evening as well.
Yeah, look, possibly not the most. Sure, look, those days are a long way off now. But somebody saying here, Conal Fenn saying unbelievable stuff from Limerick, down now at halftime and ferocious first quarter of the senior hurling, I suppose. I don't know what that is. Liam Malley also look for shout. If you want comments, obviously, if you get us on Twitter, you can get us on YouTube, wherever you're watching, you can just leave a comment and we'll get to it over the course. If you have any questions for Shane, we'll might leave Limerick there. I think they'll be waiting in the wings now for 3 weeks, and we could be talking about mid-2000s Kilkenny here, where everything else is just window dressing as we kind of wait for the All-Ireland final. But everything else will be interesting. And the Leinster final was maybe a bit of a letdown. It was like there was a point where you're thinking Dublin are still in this, but they're just not scoring enough. And then Kilkenny just, there was a little bit of a swing there with, there possibly could have been a red card. Didn't mean to overlook the possible Aaron Glenn red card in the other thing as well, in the other match as well, and it would have changed it. It is an important talking point. It would have changed the game, but there could have been a red card in the Kilkenny game as well. Then Walter Walsh wins the soft free, and it just felt gone after that, didn't it?
Yeah, it did really. I just, for me, Dublin were facing a battle before the ball was even thrown in, Mike, with everything that was going on. I mean, losing the 4 players, one because of COVID, I think the 3 guys are close contacts. But if I put it in context for people that maybe don't understand the significance of this, right? The 4 players, are Ronan Hayes, Cian O'Callaghan, Fergal Whitley, and Oisin O'Rourke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ronan Hayes was absolutely flying it at the moment. He would have played full forward, Hugh Lawler got man of the match Kilkenny, right? Outstanding game. It's a different game for Hugh Lawler if he's marking Ronan Hayes, in my opinion, all right? The other thing is Cian O'Callaghan has been brilliant for Dublin this year. Cian O'Callaghan is their best, not their best man marker. Cian O'Callaghan would have been targeted to say, whoever is going the best for Kilkenny, you're going to pick him up. And maybe that would have been Owen Cody at the start for Cian O'Callaghan. Now, Owen Cody, he chips in with a point compared to his 1-5 last day, but got on the world of ball as well. So, that's 2 things, right? You're missing one of your main forwards, you're missing one of your main defenders, okay? Then you're one of the top fullbacks in the country, and Owen O'Donnell has to go off. Now, after 2 minutes, he's pulling up. He gets substituted after 4 minutes, okay? But so there's 2 of your main defenders gone from a group of players who kept Galway to 1-9 from play for the whole match, 1-14 altogether. And it's, Matty Kenny spoke afterwards, he just said to the group, you just have to go out and do your best. But I mean, Kilkenny, they were really comfortable in the second half for me. I know it was 12-9 at half time, but in the second half, in the third quarter, especially, I know they refer to it as championship quarter, I think, in NFL or NBA terms. And, Limerick did 110-1 against Tipp, and Kilkenny did 7-3 against Dublin. Dublin 3 points in that third quarter, 2 of them from frees. Kilkenny get 4 points in a row, Mike, unanswered. And for me, that sets it up then. It's 19-12. I believe it was Keane Boland, wasn't it, that got sin binned in. And
Keane Boland got hit in the head, and
Keane Boland got hit in the head. Didn't was reluctant to go off, but look, fair play to the medical people. Jake Malone got the sin bin, I think, on 61 minutes. TJ steps up and buries it. And that's it. It's game over then. It's the Leinster title number 17 for Brian Cody as manager. Unbelievable record, will never be equaled again. I think for me, Dublin did very, very well to stay in the game for as long as they could, with all the factors that were there. And I think if they get everyone back for the quarter final, that they will still be a force. But the thing is, the preparation even now for the quarter final for them, Mike, those boys will have to stay away for 10, 12 days now, and they'll have to self-isolate. So your 4 or 5 year panel won't be able to be involved with the rest of your panel, and 2 or 3 of them probably will start the next day. And maybe they could all start, but they won't be involved in the group prep, in the video analysis, and that's another big setback for them, man. So I think there was a lot thrown at them yesterday, and they did very well, to curtail it. But Kilkenny now are in an All-Ireland semi-final, Mike, and you'd hardly even know they're in an All-Ireland semi-final. They got through their Leinster semi-final the last day against Wexford, a ferocious battle. Wexford, are Wexford really that good this year? They're not that good, in my opinion, as to where they were in 2019. But Kilkenny got through it. They got the job done. They got the job done on Saturday evening. It wasn't their fault that Dublin were missing guys. Their bench stood up again. 6 points from their bench. 1-9 from their bench against Wexford. 6 points from their bench against the last day. And it's the strength and depth they have. I thought James Maher and Danny Sutcliffe had a savage battle. And James Maher pops up with 3 points. So that'll tell you, look how Kyle Hayes did, attacking as a wing back. James Maher doing the same as well, popping up, and a standout player. Adrian Mullen gets 2 points, could have had another 4, could have had 3 or 4 points. Cody's quite enough by his standard that he set now, 1 point compared to 1-5 last day. And their bench come in 6 points for play. Killian Buckley, Michael Carey. I thought Carey's tweet was very funny after the game. Someone asked him, I wonder where this guy gets his speed from. And if anyone doesn't know, DJ is his dad. And he says, I get it from the mother. I thought it was a good one, So, it's just Kilkenny are there, in my opinion. Have they made a really top team? If Dublin had everyone, I think it would have been a completely different game. And I don't think Kilkenny have made a really top team yet. And look, who am I to question what Brian Cody's going to do? Absolutely, I'm nobody. And if Brian Cody cares what I'm going to do, that will be the daylight. But I just feel come the semi-final that they'll would probably be meeting their first real maybe top 3 team of the year. Could potentially be Galway, I suppose, if they came through, or maybe Tipperary if they come through, or we see with Clare and Cork. Look, there's so many permutations, but I just feel that while they're winning these games, that they haven't met a really, really top team just yet, in my opinion.
Well, that's interesting, because they in that case, where the Limerick can wait in the wings now and have their 3 weeks, that's no harm for them. Kilkenny might not want the break if they feel like they haven't fully got going yet, and suddenly you're facing a team from the qualifiers who's come through and is raring to go. The other thing about that then is the legs of it. I'm fascinated as to which side is better there, because I would worry, say, with Clare, if they do come through Cork this week, that'll be a very, very tough thing to do anyway. And then you've got another week straight away again against, it'll be Dublin, I'd imagine, because they've already played Tipp. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day. The thing, it's funny you mentioned Cian O'Callaghan. We do Rolling All Stars, and you kind of trying to pick it as it goes in the year. And I think we had 5 Dublin lads on for the last time we did the hurling, and people were still giving out that Cian O'Callaghan wasn't on. You couldn't pick a cornerback this year, but I wonder would they have risked O'Donnell if O'Callaghan was there? They might have put him into the middle, and that you're losing. It's such a disturbance to the team and the way you lay out when you lose somebody after 2 or 3 minutes as well. So it's just a pity that we were left in that position as kind of an underwhelming Leinster final then. But earlier in the day, we actually had 2 crackers, and you said you were in Thurles, you were commentating for Clare and Wexford, which looked like it was done and dusted early on. And I don't know what's up with that picture, but it looked like it was done and dusted early on. And then Clare just I don't know whether it was the heat or whether it was what. they just couldn't get a grip of the ball for a good, that's some tan line on Leach in, by the way, but they couldn't get a grip on the ball at all for a good 20-25 minute period. They just had absolutely no position. There were no 50-50s. They were giving the ball away sloppily in defence and stuff like that. Is that a Heat thing? Is it Wexford turning it up? I don't know what you make of this game altogether. For me, I'd be both worried as a Clare fan and really disappointed as a Wexford fan that I feel like an era is slipping away.
Yeah, I thought Clare were much the better hurling team overall for the whole day, and I would compare it, Mike, to the way Clare would have hurled against Waterford, in that it was a 4-point hammering. And I said that before. I thought Clare dominated every sector, and I thought this wasn't far off it. I thought Clare were dominant every sector of the pitch. 1-9 to 3 points up after the first quarter, and they had 3 wides in that time as well. Like they just looked so composed on the ball. It's knockout hurling, but Wexford looked a much more nervous team. Clare's tactics, got their tactics spot on. If Wexford went short, they weren't really. They were happy enough to get it to go long. Why? Because they would have had their half-back line set with Diarmuid Ryan, John Conlon, Paddy Fitz, Colin Galvin is dropping deep, Colin Malone is dropping deep as well. Aidan McCarthy's able to cover ground. And Ryan Taylor is coming out the field as well. And they were able to mop that up and work the ball up the field. And usually, as I said, Clare always left 1 or 2 guys light, so they always had a target guy in there. So that was usually Shanahan in this case, and I thought Shanahan had a fine game, chipping in with 2 points. But if you look at Wexford, where they were turned over the most, that middle third, Clare lads just swarmed like they did against Waterford. Didn't see it as much against Tipp now, but they swarmed, and they turned Wexford over time and time again, used the ball well, and Wexford. And you feel sorry for the Wexford lads sometimes. I mean, like Matthew Hanlon or Liam Ryan got a lot of sharp puck outs sometimes. They would have went maybe 2 or 3 yards. Kevin Foley dropping deep as well. But when he looked up, it was a strange one for me. Not one Wexford person maybe inside 50 yards. Not one. Just a sea of yellow and blue jerseys, like Clare jerseys, and no Wexford lad to be picked out. And what worked for Wexford then was, and I'm sure all the traditionalists were delighted, they moved their full forward line finishing up was Rory O'Connor, Conor MacDonald, and Lee Chin. They pumped ball in the top of them. Those boys caught the ball or broke the ball, and they got great rewards out of it. They scored 1-5 in the last quarter. But for me, the damage was done in the first quarter. 1-9 to 3 points. You go up to half time. Then it's 1-15 to 1-10. Dee O'Keefe's goal, I thought, was a great example of players thinking about sin bin and not pulling the lead down, because he went through, and if you watch it, 3 Clare guys were coming on him. Like Dan McCormick, didn't want to get the hand in, didn't want to get the sin bin because they knew it was going to be inside, it was going to be a penalty, and chances are they're going to score the penalty anyway. Let him go, couldn't get the flick off, and Dee O'Keefe scores a goal. And Wexford outscored Clare 176 points in the second quarter. Yeah. But I just always felt, I really did always feel that Clare were going to win this game. And even Lee Chin's goal finishing up, I mean, Clare were 6 points up after Gary Cooney gets the ball from a massive high ball in from the great Tony Kelly, who hooked, blocked, worked ferociously hard for his team the other day. It's a great thing for Clare that they're not depending on Tony getting scores from play, only 2 from play the other day. Yeah. They have a great spread of scorers there now, so they do.
Tell me then, so one of the frustrations again, and you're watching, sometimes when you're watching your own county, you could tell you do well with Tipp, to be honest, because, and especially you're so involved that you can kind of separate the fan and the analyst, but you get lost in it when it's your own county. But for me, the frustration with Clare is winning unbelievable ball and then not using it. So the amount of simple mistakes of just giving it directly to a Wexford lad, or getting a high ball blocked up with a high hurl or something like that over the course of the game. It must have been a phenomenal amount. I'd love to actually watch it back and get some stats on it. But I suppose you talked a couple of weeks ago about, look, getting shots off is the most important thing. If they're wide, they're wide. That's your tactic, and that's we shouldn't be thinking as wide counts in the way we do sometimes. That's part of how you play. Is that cost of doing business almost if you play with the style they do? Is that you're going to give away some scores in that regard?
Yeah, you are definitely. Yeah, but I thought the efficiency of both teams, and I know you're looking at it as a fan, Mike, and people, with your heart on your sleeve, kind of looking at the thing. But 11 wides for Clare, 10 wides for Wexford in the whole game. it's not absolutely terrible either. Like, I mean, I thought there was a fair amount of efficiency with the ball, and there wasn't much opportunity to get
though, a
back
lot
off.
of that kind of,
Yeah, but I tell you, like Mike, as I said to you, like, I mean, lads, Clare were ferocious in the first quarter, even in the second quarter as well, and Wexford came back strong. But I tell you, it was roasting commentating on the game, let alone try to do anything else. And it's just something that you have to factor in over the weekend, that these guys are professional athletes in every way, but we're not professional athletes living in South America. Like, we're professional athletes living in a small island of Ireland where we've got weather like we just haven't seen in so long. So you can't account for it. Like, you could do altitude training or anything, but you can't account for giving your all in 29, 30 degrees of heat. And that was evident for me after 46 minutes. Damien Reck came on for Wexford, and in the next 10 minutes, there are 9 substitutions made in the next 10 minutes because lads they're out, they're flat and everything, and with the heat and everything, and you're trying to make the right decision. But I just think that the weather was a massive factor in some of the decision making at the weekend, and getting lads on the pitch. Even the subs that came on at 45 or 50 minutes. If you look at them after the game, and both sets of players just sat down on the ground after the game because they were wrecked. Wexford knew their year was over. Clare knew that they had to get themselves right for another qualifier round next weekend. But everybody was just zapped. They were zapped, and they all sat down. And for me, Mike, that was a big thing in maybe some of the decision making, and going on these long solo runs, losing the ball, it sucked the energy out of you. You could see John Conlon, he came off, he was absolutely wrecked after making a few of those power runs. But it was very, very hard going for everyone playing anything at the weekend. If you're playing Junior F at the weekend, Mike, it would have been hard going. Like.
Absolutely, it's hard going for Junior F most of the time, not to be honest. But look, I think that can't be stated enough. Like, I mean, and any criticism is you're hoping it's more systematic than personal, because God only knows how they actually were even managing to hit the ball towards the end of the game or win possession. But especially for that one, which was like a 1/2 throw in and on the hottest day of the year. But we've got. I'm just intrigued to know now where Clare and Waterford, because we shouldn't have, Waterford had to dig deep a little bit against, in fairness, Laois. What a turnaround this year for them, but they're gone now, and Waterford did come through in the end by 5 points in the end, late goal there. But Clare and Waterford, in 2010, you guys lost in the first round to Cork and had to go kind of the scenic route. I know it's not the only time you did it, but in that was a sort of a momentum over the course of the year. The more championship games you got into it, the more the Tipp team that would, literally, like, one of the most famous Tipp teams you have, the 521s, all of that sort of stuff. You kind of came together over the course of that year and developed into what would win the All-Ireland. I can sense in Clare, for certain, we'll see what happens with Galway, Cork next week, Waterford, whoever it is, that they're coming alive. Their championship games are definitely helping them. They're becoming more cohesive as a team, so on and so forth. But at the same time, this is every week, and you're playing in the height of summer. We mightn't have a week like this next week, but it's going to be hard to recover from it. As a player, where would you want it? Would you want to be playing every week? Would you want a couple of weeks off? Would you rather be in Cork and Galway's position now or in Clare's?
Being honest, I'd rather be in Clare's position. Okay. I just think, young team, as in, like, they're okay. They have a lot of experienced guys. Tony's there a while, John Conlon's there a while, but still relatively young guys, 27, 28, 29 years of age. Like, I mean, how do they say this? Players nowadays are so in tune with sports science and so in tune with recovery and what actual recovery they need to do. And managements now are as well. That managements don't feel we have to get something in here now Tuesday or Wednesday night, lads, and we have to get something into them. They know that, no, these lads are fine. The guys who didn't get a bit of work into them, we can work them. But the guys who are playing 50 plus minutes, rest, recovery, do maybe a really sharp session on Thursday or Friday night, with the games on Saturday, probably Thursday night. Sharp session, 30, 45 minutes. So I would personally rather be in Clare's position, where they're coming through now after being through a ferocious battle, like, and the whole world was against them. And I said it during the week, last week. I said they were coming in so wounded with everything that was going on, with the decision that was made against them in the Gaelic grounds, with all that was going on internally in Clare, with the minors having such a heavy defeat last week to Cork by 40 points. And I think that group, you can see this group have so much respect for Brian Lohan as well, and the Clare management, that they're willing to do whatever it takes. And I think they're coming off it now in momentum. They know how to play together. They've been through really tough battles with each other, and they have a massive win in a knockout game. And you just cannot buy that. Like, to win a knockout game of hurling. That when it comes down to when it got close, Clare were able to keep pulling on, keep getting a couple of points. The goal obviously killed off the game for them as well, 6 points up. It was their game. And, Galway haven't done that yet. I know there's a massive performance in them. And in Cork, I feel did a lot of right against Limerick. But I would personally rather be in Clare's position to say, have momentum, confidence in the group. They'll be absolutely buzzing the train this week while they might be doing a lot. They've won a massive knockout game. And you know what? Whoever they play next will probably might be favourites. And that seems to suit this Clare group perfectly and suit Lohan as well, that he's just getting the most out of them all the time. And I think they're going into it in a great place, Mike.
Okay, if we were to call Clare, Cork, Waterford, Galway next week?
I'm going to say Clare to beat Cork on the basis of that
never
momentum.
Beat Cork, Shane.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like
we've had a few Munster finals. We've had but there was one match there. There was one match there a few years ago. Yeah,
2013. The omens are there. You're getting going through that system again. So Clare to beat Cork, I think they're in a good place. They don't seem to have any injuries as well, and I'm thinking that Shane O'Donnell might be back in the fray as well, who could be a massive boost. The Watford Galway one. Watford are going to come in. Liam Cahill made no bones about it. Their performance for the whole match against Laois wasn't good enough, while Laois were brilliant. They've been excellent the last 2 games, going 15-15. And I just feel it's not the same Watford group. The big players are Tadhg de Burke is a massive loss, and I just think Galway will be so hurt. I think 1-9 from play was one of their lowest scores from play in maybe 3-4 years championship hurling for Galway, and I just feel they'll have a massive point to prove. And Shane O'Neill could be head on the block here as well for Shane O'Neill, because for him now with the current group of players he has, Mike, let's be honest, and the talent he has, they need to be getting back into an All-Ireland final for it to be seen as some bit of a successful year. So massive game for them. So I just think massive game for Galway, and I'm going to go with Galway to beat Waterford. Okay,
right. So big calls there. Last message here, Paul Tierney on Facebook saying, "Good as a Tipp fan, all the expected usual comments. Okay, deserve it to a point, but now Tipp need to finish it off. But neutrals looking on must have mixed views in Limerick, as they aren't that unbeatable as they seem." I don't know, me and you have probably a different thought on that, and maybe they're more unbeatable than they seem. But yeah. I suppose the last thing is that from Tipp's point of view, can Tipp come back from this? We'll talk about it in a couple of weeks. Obviously, they've got a couple of weeks off now as they wait to see what happens in the next week. Our Tipp, it's hard to come back from that kind of shell shock in the second half, but I suppose having the week off is definitely useful.
Yeah, definitely is. They'll regroup. No better man than Liam Sheedy to regroup them, get the confidence going. I think hindsight is a great thing, I suppose, but we really will have to look at our bench and look at getting these guys on the field earlier, or maybe giving them starts, and just I suppose you don't learn things unless you're involved in them. We will definitely need to look at that, changing around maybe. Few players changing around positionally, as I said, get some of maybe the younger guys in there as well. Get them the experience of knockout hurling as well, which is massive, something you can't buy. But no, look, I think they'll regroup, they'll go again. To be massive now with the qualifiers, round of qualifiers the weekend, Mike, just to see what way it's going to work out. I think the only way we can have a draw is if Waterford and Cork win. Otherwise, it's kind of if Clare win, it's going to be Tipp and the winners of Waterford and Galway. Look, it's going to be a very, very interesting couple of weeks as well. So they'll rally the troops and they'll go again. But look, Tipp, I'm not writing them off by any means. I think they'll take confidence from the massive performance they had in the first half and try and learn from where it went completely wrong in the second half for them.
Absolutely. Well, Shane McGrath, thanks so much for joining us today. Great stuff as always, and we'll chat to you next week.